So I was bleeding from my bones and taking birth control. And like, that's actually a recipe for disaster. And I think I took 2 birth control pills by the time they found the clot. And that's crazy because it's literally all it takes.
Welcome to Athlete Actually, the women's sports podcast where we ask the questions athletes actually want to answer. I'm Elizabeth Montavon, a professional water skier and marketing strategist, and this show is produced by Parity, a women's sports marketing and sponsorship consultancy. Welcome to this episode of Athlete Actually. I'm your host, Elizabeth Montavon, and I am so excited for this very first episode of our show. Today I'm joined by Dara Mabrey, a Notre Dame guard who was one of the top shooters in college basketball, finishing her career with over 300 made three-pointers and an ACC championship. After transferring from Virginia Tech and stepping into a leadership role with the Fighting Irish, she built a reputation for clutch performances and high on-court IQ. Since graduating, she's taken her game internationally, playing professionally in countries like Hungary, Poland, Greece, and Australia, navigating the global basketball landscape in real time. And today's story really dives into the unplanned parts of her transition from college to pro ball and how her experiences have influenced the way injuries are understood and handled in pro women's sports. It's truly a one-of-a-kind story that impacts all women athletes. This season of Athlete Actually is presented by DNA Vibe. DNA Vibe is a new category of wearable regenerative technology designed to support the body's natural recovery processes, trusted by athletes, trainers, and high performers who are redefining what strength, recovery, and longevity look like. DNA Vibe's patented wearable devices combine non-thermal red and near-infrared light, micromagnetic signaling, and microvibration to work in harmony with the body's natural processes to support circulation, comfort, and overall well-being, helping you move better, recover smarter, and stay in the game. If you're training hard or simply want to feel and perform your best, you can learn more at dnavibe.com/recovery. But before we dive into today's conversation, it's time for a segment called On Our Radar. One thing in women's sports that's caught our attention. Here's the headline. Parity athletes Lexi Hull and Chelsea Poppins have joined the ownership group of League One Volleyball San Francisco, a new professional volleyball team set to debut in 2027. Why does this matter? Well, this isn't just about a new team. It's about who is building the future of women's sports. You're seeing current and former athletes not just competing, but stepping into ownership, investing in leagues, and helping shape what comes next. My takeaway? Women athletes aren't just the product anymore. They're becoming the builders of our own industry. That shift is going to change how leagues grow, how fans engage, and consequently, how brands think about partnerships. That's exactly why conversations like the one we're about to have matter. So that is what's on our radar, and this is Dara Mabrey. Dara, thank you so much for joining us on this very first episode of our show. Tell me a little bit about how you're doing and where you're at right now.
I'm so excited to be here. First of all, thank you for having me. I'm currently in Southern Australia, so we have a little bit of a time difference going on this podcast, which is pretty cool, which we can get into about, overseas and stuff. But yeah, I've been in Australia for 3 weeks. I'm loving it so far. And I'm pretty excited to see what's to come because I've only explored a little bit here, given it's only been a couple weeks. But yeah, I'm here. I'm in Australia. And good morning, good evening to anybody that's watching this.
Right. Hello to all. And I love that you're in Australia. I love that for you. Every time I've competed in Australia, it's just been an incredible trip. So love that you're there. And I think you have a lot of exploring to do. But I have kept everybody on the edge of their seat on this show already. And everybody wants to know from you, what is the story that no one's ever asked you about?
I came from a basketball family where I essentially learned everything from. And I have 2 sisters also that have been a really big influence on me and have been in the spotlight most of their life. So yeah, a lot of people do like to talk about the similarities, but the big difference is that injury. Knock on wood, the 3 of us, honestly, were never really sidelined. We came up really healthy. We were blessed throughout college to just have small, maybe lingering things or like an ankle sprain or something like that. And then I went through what was honestly the lowest point of my life. hit rock bottom, and it was very hard to relate to anybody, including my sisters during that time.
Yeah, I could absolutely imagine. Do you wanna talk us through that particular injury? I know what you're referring to, but our listeners,
Yeah,
certainly might not. Would you be willing to share that experience?
definitely. So, senior year at Notre Dame, I used my 5th year to come back for COVID. So it was my last season of college basketball. It was January of 2022. No, 23. Sorry, yeah, 23. And I was going up for essentially an open layup. They actually called a foul, which is besides the point because she didn't even foul me. But everyone was trying to figure out like if it was contact or not. If you know, you know. Unfortunately, again, that it's usually non-contact. And I kind of just, like I said, was blessed with no injury before I started. I think the number was like in the hundreds of me starting every single college basketball game and not missing one throughout the year. And I went up for an open layup and I just felt the bottom and the top of my leg like essentially go in 2 different directions, and I was in, like, an enormous amount of pain. So they thought maybe I did something, like, with the MCL, which tends to be more painful for people watching this. The MCL is the inside of your knee, and that hurts a lot more than just, like, tearing your ACL. And I went back to the table. The surgeon did the ACL test where, like, they wiggle your leg, and he was like, "Okay, yeah, it feels loose." And in that moment, like, everything just kinda shut down for me. Uh, you never know, like, usually you're watching it and you never know, like, as a female athlete until it happens to you, like, the feeling of disappointment. Because I was a senior, my brain just went in every single direction, like, "What's going to happen to me now?" But then later that night, I kept, like, whenever I would stand up, I was on the crutches because I couldn't weight bear, but whenever I would stand up, I felt like I was, like, gonna pass out. And I would go dizzy and I would see dark. And I was like, that's weird. I've never heard of that. Like, we just thought it was an ACL and it was a Sunday night. So I was getting an MRI at like 7 o'clock right away the next morning. And typically they tell you when you have an injury, a knee injury, depending on what they think it is to keep the leg straight overnight so you don't damage anything going forward, like regarding having extension. I couldn't like, essentially, if this is my leg, I just couldn't get it to there without feeling like I was going to pass out. So we got the MRI, gave the MRI back to the surgeon, and the surgeon actually was like, "This is wrong. Like, this is the wrong patient. There has to be some sort of mistake." And his assistant was like, "Unfortunately, like, there's no mistake." And so I remember being in the football training room, which was not the women's basketball one, because I had like 4 trainers around my bedside. Again, which speaks to the support system that I had at Notre Dame that we can get into after this. And they were like, "You have 3 tibial plateau fractures, an ACL avulsion," which means that my ACL like didn't pop in half. It ripped off of the fractures. That's why I couldn't straighten my leg because I had fractures in there. And then
Wow.
they saw shadowing on the meniscus, but couldn't confirm if it was torn or not. And then 2 days later, so 48 hours passed, was supposed to have surgery in, like, 72 hours, basically. I got up, nearly passed out this time at practice, got, like, rushed to the emergency room, and I had a blood clot, which, like, took a turn for the worse because I couldn't have surgery. I had to let fractures heal essentially in the wrong place, and, like, they were like, "We don't know what's gonna happen now, like, if we have to let fractures heal in the wrong place." But bless my surgeon, like, I had other doctors look at my report, and they were like, "Hell no, I want nothing to do with that." And my surgeon was like, "I'm gonna fix you up, and you're gonna play again." And, like, from that moment on, like, I saw the look in his eyes, and he honestly gave me the only bit of hope that I felt over, like, that entire week. So the medicine was terrible. I was on injections for 3 weeks, like, having to use needles on myself. Just, like, a bad scenario, but I always tell people that it happened for me and not to me because, like, it fixed me way beyond the basketball court, way beyond it. That's one thing I could take away from it, I can tell you that.
Wow. Your emotional maturity around all of that is so impressive. And I have so many questions for you. Kind of, first of all, going back more towards the beginning, since this is your first major injury, um, I'd love to know if you relate to this. I feel like as an athlete, I'm very aware of my body and little changes in my body, I notice them, right? So when you
Yeah,
have this massive change and you almost kind of lose your body, now as an athlete, you're fully in your head. And living fully in your head after kind of getting to go back and forth between your head and your body, and I don't know, some athletes, the split is probably different. But now you're fully in your head. And like you said, your mind was racing in a million directions. This is your senior year. What are you going to do? What's next? What was that like for you, really kind of losing your body for the first time?
terrible, awful. And over the course, I felt like I was losing my body too, because if you know anything about injury, you fluctuate like crazy. So you don't work out, then you gain weight, and then you start working out again and you drop everything, it feels like. And I would honestly say, like, it felt like an identity crisis. Everything you did, even it goes way beyond just looking at my body. Everything I did was physical with my body, obviously, and my mind. But like at one point I was laying in the bed and I was like, what's productive now for me? Like, do I become an A plus student? I was a pretty damn good student at Notre Dame already, but I was like, do I become like an A plus student and just put my nose in a textbook? Like, what feels productive to me now? And that's when
Right.
like I found my body back in the little things when I put my mind to it first. So, like, my biggest thing over the injury was I did a million puzzles. I would sit there at night, I would light the candles, like, make the hotel room that I was in, the handicap hotel room became like an oasis for me. So, all the little things I did, like, with my mind, got my body back. And now, like, that's one of the bigger things that I did take like in my career now is it's all up here and then your body will follow. But losing that and the identity crisis was terrible. Oh my gosh. I remember one day like looking in the mirror on the crutches and I just started crying, let it all out because I was like, I don't recognize myself right now.
Of
Like,
course.
who is
Of
that?
course.
Yeah. And if athletes, I feel like a lot of athletes, especially the upcoming generations, like they don't know how important the mind is at all.
It really, to me, sounds like your willingness and determination around that mind component and not letting that go awry and, in fact, keeping it sharp. That was almost, if not more important than this surgeon who was willing to take on what to them must have been an absolutely insane case. I mean, it absolutely baffles me that doctors turned you away, but I understand if somebody doesn't believe something is their skill set. Okay, I can respect that. But that one doctor who said, no, we're going to fix this and we're going to make you better. When you are an injured athlete and you have most likely no hope, at least it feels like in that moment, that one person who gives you just a sliver, a morsel of hope that everything is going to be okay is worth their weight in gold. So what was it like when you realized that you had this person who might be offering you a window to a better future than everything that your mind is telling you?
It kind of it grounded me in a time where I told you that my mind was all over the place and I was like breathing really heavy. It just took me honestly and went like this. And it didn't last long. I was laying down on the table like looking up at him, I remember. And it wasn't just that moment. It was another moment. My athletic trainer that rehabbed me, she told me after in the Notre Dame football room, I remember she had the report in her hand and she looked at me like right in my eye and she was holding my hand and she was like, I would never lie to you. Your recovery is going to be awful. It's going to be terrible, but we're going to get you back and I'm going to do everything I can for you. And I will never forget that. The what I went through with her also changed me forever because I've never had like a relationship like that with my athletic trainer. And some of the awful, awful points of the recovery were I had to keep the leg straight for 8 to 12 weeks, which is typical for any bone to fully heal. Like when you keep going back to the x-ray and it gets less and less and less, I had to manually break the scar tissue in my knee after keeping it straight for 8 weeks. And that was the
Brutal.
most painful thing I've ever gone through. Like I would go ghost pale sometimes. Like, I would get that real, like, metally taste in my mouth, and she would always like, she had, like, I told her she had angel hands. She always knew when to push me. She always knew when to shut it down because, like, we had to clear out the training room every time because it sounded horrible. Like, I was like, "I don't want anyone to watch me go through this." And that's another thing, like, being vulnerable and asking for help. God, there's a million things that we could talk about this injury. But yeah, her name's Anne Marquez, and she ended up, presenting my injury at the NBA Summer League in 2024 over the summer. And, it's funny because she usually goes every year, and there was people, like, that went back to her, and they were like, "Whatever happened to that girl?" And she's still so proud to say, like, she healed and she went and played overseas. So, she has a piece of my heart,
Incredible.
and yeah.
Of course, of course. Now, I know part of why your injury has been studied is because this blood clot was a little bit of an anomaly for this type of injury, and especially at your age. So, can you talk us through how this blood clot came to be, and what it means from your perspective for the future of young professional women athletes in your circumstances? This episode of Athlete Actually is supported by Sport Certified Powered by iHerb, a collection of supplements rigorously tested for quality, purity, and performance. For athletes, what you put in your body matters. Sport Certified Powered by iHerb products are tested to meet strict standards, giving you confidence that what's on the label is what's in the bottle. From protein and hydration to essential vitamins and recovery support, their lineup is built for active lifestyles. You can explore the full Sport Certified collection at sportcertified.com.
Yeah. So, at the time, I felt like this really bad pain in the back of my calf, and I'm not a doctor, but I do know that typically they're either in your leg or in your lungs, and there was notes like, typical if you look up symptoms, it's, like, really warm in the area or, discoloration, like bruising, and I didn't have either of those. I just had, like, an immense amount of pain in the back of my calf. But, like, the killer is that I was taking contraceptive. So I was on, like, some really low dose birth control pill, uh, and not knowing that, like, when you break your leg, the bones bleed a lot. So I was bleeding from my bones and taking birth control, and, like, that's actually a recipe for disaster. And I think I took 2 birth control pills by the time they found the clot, and that's crazy because it's literally all it takes. And they put me on blood thinners immediately, and after that, I never have, and I still won't go back on birth control again because the thought of it just scares me. And, like, that's also another thing that injury did for me was give me this new perspective of, like, a wholesome body. And I know birth control has its benefits, but, like, it scared the hell out of me, so me and birth control don't go together anymore. But
Right.
in the bigger picture, for female athletes that go down with an injury, especially, like, a major injury in any part of your body, it should now be checked early if they're taking birth control, because if you don't know yet what they have, like, especially fractures and any sort of bleeding, then the coming off the birth control and going on the typical dose, like the 5 milligram aspirin, is, like, highly recommended now because of me, I think. So, again, like, after we had, unfortunately, at Notre Dame, like, 3 more that came after me. It was just a really hard year for our team, and it was one of the first things, "Are you taking birth control?" And I think, honestly, thank God they found mine, and it could come down to saving lives, like,
Yeah. I
'cause
mean,
you
the
just never
Dara
know.
Mabrey, right. The Dara Mabrey protocol is very real now in treating these injuries. I can say, as an athlete, that when I have taken birth control from like health professionals, I've never gotten any direction around how it might impact potential injuries. And I am gathering that you were never really informed of the same.
Yeah, and, I mean, in their defense, they had probably no idea that my knee looked like that, but I don't know, like, the doctors were like, "Wow, we're amazed," and it gave me hope because although it sucked in the moment, I was like, "If I can help other female athletes, then come on, like, there's nothing better than that," you know?
Of
And
course.
there's just, like, something so wholesome about, like, being a woman and having to look after your body extra because I know over the course, of me rehabbing, I would always have questions. I wanted to know everything that I was doing and just learn more about my body, and it made me so, like, in tune with myself and what I was doing, and this one therapist told me one time, he was like I was jumping off of a box, and it was when I was trying to do, like, box jumps and land on one leg, and I still had, like, that half an inch where my knee would go in and then go out, and I would be like, "I don't understand, like, I'm consciously trying to force it out," and he literally was like, "At some point, you gotta give yourself grace in this because women's knees and hips were meant to bear children and not play basketball." And that, like, completely changed my mindset, and I took no offense to it at all because I was like, "He's right." Like, look what happens. It's another thing is that there's a lot of research on knee injuries with women when they're in their cycle, and that was
Mhm.
also the first question that they asked me. I actually wasn't in my cycle, but everybody else that I know that did it was in their cycle because our hips change, and then it puts more pressure on our knees because our hips are open during our cycle.
Yes, and I love that we're finally seeing teams and leagues take research into that more seriously in an effort
Totally.
to preserve their players, which makes sense. It is their greatest asset, right? As an athletic team or league. I would love to know from you, part of your legacy now in sports is the fact that you have in some ways prompted attention to or research into the overlap that comes between professional women athletes who are on contraception and the unfortunate circumstances of injury. I know this was not a planned part of your legacy in career, but what does it feel like to know that something terrible that happened to you, your willingness to take it on head first, grow through it, get better, come out the other side a better athlete, and then share your story? You have looked out for the future of all women athletes. What does that feel like?
At first, almost felt like a victim, like, "Oh, why am I the one that has to go through this?" and all of that, and honestly now, like, I feel like a superwoman, like, 'cause if I can do it, then you can do it. There's no difference, and I personally don't think that there's enough research and enough backup behind something that happens all the time, not just in women's basketball. I mean, you've probably seen it for yourself a bunch too, like, in that area, I know it's super common,
Yeah, absolutely.
but it made me feel, like, powerful and not why me. At first, it was why me because I was like, "Oh my god, this is terrible." And then when I heard it would just be people talking, even doctors that I encountered that were like, I found that really interesting and I took a lot from that. That was some random dermatologist that I went to. I was like, okay, like if I'm making people's lives better, even if it was like through my hardship, then I feel great. Cause, you know, a lot of times, like when you're an athlete, especially a student athlete, like at a prestigious university, you're exposed to helping people in other ways that normally turns back to you being in the spotlight. Like, oh, we have this athlete here to coach, or we have this star athlete here to influence children, which is amazing. I love the kids. But here's an athlete that went through a brutal injury and a lot of adversity that could actually help you and change your life essentially like in a split second. I thought that was a better feeling than anything
Yeah.
else. Yeah.
Yeah, you never plan for the bad milestones in sports, right? When you're a little girl at night and you've got posters of your favorite athletes taped up on the wall and you're dreaming about your athletic career, you dream about the wins and the incredible moments, right? And you would never dream this up. And yet it became such a pivotal moment for you and it's changed all of sports. Now that you are so far past it, and I know only more time is going to go by and you're only going to get, bigger, better, faster, stronger, as we say in my sport. How do you see the game now? Your pro ball, what does it look like to you, knowing what you know?
Yeah. I think it's definitely a real thing to say once an injured athlete comes back, you have an appreciation for the game like you never had before. And that is very true. But in the pros, I still learned more as the years go on. And I say as the years go on, I'm still in year two. I just finished year two in Greece. But one thing I do want to touch on is like I got a little greedy at one point and I had to ground myself again where I was like, Okay, my first year was in Hungary. I did very well. It went great. And then I was like, I love basketball and year 1 went so well. So now it has to keep going well from here. Like the thought process of I went through the most awful thing ever. So now everything from here has to be going up is not true because I still wouldn't learn anything. So I found like throughout the process, I've still been through some adversity. No adversity will ever compare to that. But I think that's what it did for me. So I can still go through the adversity. I can still sulk sometimes. I can still have my bad days. But there's always that voice in my head that says, you literally prayed on your knees to be here. You asked God a million times, please put me back on the basketball court. I don't care what it looks like. If it's not pretty, if I'm not the same, please put me back on that court in somehow or some way. And believe it or not, like my body feels better than it did before I was injured. But having that thought in the back of my head, no matter what adversity I go through, like you prayed to be here. Imagine if you couldn't, you know, that helps me. But it's not like, yes, it goes up when you're first coming back, but I want to be so real and transparent on this podcast. Like you're not just going to not hit adversity after that. And I kind of learned that and wanted like to tell a couple people that I've talked to about injury, like, yeah, it's glorious when you're first coming back and it's like you're free. And I was like, year 1, I'm just so happy to be here. I didn't care. I played so free. And then like year 2, I started to put pressure on myself and I was like, okay, pressure is good because now you know, like you're here and you can do it and you have that thought. But you have to take pressure off of yourself. And that goes for anybody that's playing and not been injured. But yeah,
Absolutely. I think that your ability to recognize that the pressure was ultimately going to hold you back really speaks to the resilience you've developed over these past handful of years now. The resilience, but also your willingness to jump into gratitude, gratitude for the sport, gratitude for your journey. I've always experienced that I compete my best when I'm coming from a place of gratitude. And I know that can be hard to get there when you're living in the adversity, but I think that's a great message for athletes of all sports.
definitely. I agree. Gratitude. Honestly, being happy that you still have the ability to do what you love. And as soon as you like kind of switch your mindset, I feel like it takes pressure off of you. And I think that's big with honestly kids growing up. And I think like the influence, like that could really help. Once they understand gratitude, you're doing something that a lot of people actually would love to do, capable or incapable, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why professional female athletes make such great role models for young fans, is because we go through these experiences and are willing to process them out loud faster than a lot of other athletes might be. And I think that really lends to the fact that, young fans, especially Gen Z, really care about athletes like you and me. Well, kind of to tie it up, I would love to know what's on the horizon for you. Let's talk a little bit about the future. Where are you playing next, or are you in a transition period? Tell me a little bit more.
Definitely. Okay, so like a little transition, a little like still playing. So I did enter my name in the draft when I got hurt. Obviously, didn't get drafted. And so the end goal, obviously, for me and a lot of other women's basketball players is to make it to the WNBA. And I was in Hungary my first year, and that was great. I had a great experience. I got used to the speed and the physicality of the game, which was great. I definitely had a few like coming to God moments in those games. And then I went to Greece this past year, and Greece was amazing. I learned a lot about myself. Like I said, kind of before, like year 1 is like great. I'm just so happy to be here, you know. And year 2, I learned so much. So super thankful for my journey in Greece. Now, like this is all while actively still trying to get an opportunity in America. I'm in Australia now playing in NBL 1, which is like, it's about to be their winter here, but it's like a summer league. And it's fun. I'm really new to it, so I don't have a lot to say yet besides like I have enjoyed it. The pace of the game is fast and my teammates are super cool and obviously the lifestyle in Australia is amazing. And then I don't know, it's early now for next year. Uh, I have an agent, manager. A lot of people over here call it manager. This podcast is audience friendly. So yeah, we're working on opportunities for next season. I'm excited. The fun part about like being over here is it could change in a split second. Like, you could be going to one country one day, and then 3 days later, you could be going somewhere on the other side of the map. But yeah, that's my life right now. I've been, like, setting goals. The off season is really nice because you have, like, all the time to just completely focus on yourself. So I've been in the gym a lot, drinking a lot of coffee, and just trying to remain where I am while still, like, it's good to be excited about what's to come next. So, yeah.
I love this journey that you're on now. And I love that you're leaning into all of the nuance of it. When I
Yeah.
travel to compete, we have an international tour as well. And on the one hand, it can feel like, oh my God, I'm so out of my routine and it's so hard to be good when I'm not in my norm. But like, that is the beauty of it, is you're not in your norm. You have the privilege of going to all these incredible places and doing a sport you love. And so I love that you recognize all of that, but you're really in the journey. And it's so cool to hear about. Before we wrap up, I need to take us to a segment called The Last Lap. So the premise of this segment is sports trivia, if you will. So Dara, if you, Dara Mabrey, were the answer to a sports trivia question, what would you like that sports trivia question to be?
That's such a good question. Oh my gosh, that's such a good question. You might stump me on this. What would I be the answer for? Okay. You could say, like, name one player that screams, like, contagious energy and is super passionate. You should say me.
That's so wholesome. What athlete has contagious energy and is super passionate? Your answer is Dara Mabrey. Oh, I love that. You are so wholesome.
Thank you.
Well, Dara, it was an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. And because it's morning for you right now, I hope you have a absolutely wonderful day.
Thanks.
I cannot wait to follow you on your Australian journey now. And if fans want to follow you and keep up with you, what's your Instagram handle?
Just Dara Mabrey. My full name, no underscores, nothing fancy. You should see me on there.
I love that that happened for you. That happened for me too. And isn't it nice when you get to have your whole
Yes.
name on anything?
Did it happen years ago? I've had the same username since I was in, like, 6th grade when I first got an Instagram.
Don't ever let that go because I don't think you'll get
No,
it back.
no. It's something very serious, actually.
All right. Dara, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Athlete Actually. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow, rate, and share with someone who should be part of the conversation. To learn more about how brands are partnering with pro women athletes, visit ParityNow.com.